Hello and welcome to another session of AZMAT System tutorial. Today we'll go through one of the menus of AZMAT System. So let's begin by opening the program file. So file, open, and going through the AZMAT System main program file. Open as read-only as always. Always open the program files and other AZMAT System files in read-only mode. So AZMAT System password. This is to ensure that only authorized users can open AZMAT System. Two-letter ID, I'm using, every user has to have a two-letter ID. I'm using AA and 4-digit password, which you can change yourself. Right, AZMAT System menu. Here is the system is ready now. And select the required command either from the AZMAT menus JKXGMUZYN or from any Excel menus. So OK, the actual, as soon as I click OK, I will get another message here saying that the add-ins menu would be added here through which we can get AZMAT System commands. So there. Just before I do that, just do that, and I'll just rearrange this window so I can see the scroll bars. So Windows, arrange all. OK. So I can scroll through. Right. So all the AZMAT System menus are accessed by clicking the add-in, which will be the last item would be added after your Excel menus. In this case, I have got the developer as well here, which you probably will have if you set up the system your own Excel as that, but not always. Not all the Excel menus will have like that. But in this particular case, I'm using Excel 2010, so that is what I have. I've added that to my menus. We'll go through the actual Excel. What you have to do is set up to use on your PC in order to use AZMAT System in a different tutorial. Right now, let's just go start looking at the actual AZMAT System menus in detail. So AZMAT System menus are accessed via add-ins. Click that, and there you have all the AZMAT menus: J, K, X, G, M, U, Z, Y, N. So today we'll go, so click the down arrow, it's the drop-down menu, and here if I scroll this down, you can see there are more items. So the J menu of AZMAT System is the main menu. Whereas, for example, here K menu, if I click on the K, is rates environment menu. Rates or yield curve environment menu. X menu is the Excel environment menu. That means most of these commands you will carry out within Excel as such, in the Excel spreadsheet as such, as opposed to, for example, if you had opened one of the investment banking calculation models, say SSWAP, then you'll actually carry out all the commands. If you open the SSWAP model, you'll carry on all the commands using the Z menu, which has been created especially for, as it says, SSWAP menu. All SSWAP menu commands are here, other than a few control key commands, in which case you don't have to use the menu. But otherwise, all these commands refer to the SSWAP model of AZMAT System. It's a star model. So in here, let's go back here, J menu. So don't forget to use the vertical scroll bar to see more commands which are not in view. So we'll just basically go very briefly one by one, each of these menu items, what they are, and then later on perhaps go in more detail, actually doing the things it says. So it's the first one here. We have the VA. That is the first line is just the title. It's not a menu item. You will learn as you watch the actual later on in the program files how to create, even like how to create these separated lines to separate different groups of items within a particular menu. And also how to actually have a descriptive line here, which is not a menu at all. But this is the first menu, V. So you have a letter, or for example, you could have something else. In this case, let's see here. Y menu is very large. I can see that in here. In here, I'm using all the letters in here, but I'm also using numbers. For example, here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you can use the letters or numbers, whatever. One letter, one character, I should say. So a character could be a letter or a number in this case. We are using that, then you have to have at least one space. In this case, I'm using 2 spaces. So V, for example, V, and then space, couple of spaces, then activate, then a brief description of the menu. You don't want to make this description too long, otherwise the menu here, when they drop down, it'll be just too long. Then you need a scroll bar here probably to see the whole, what the actual item is. So keep it brief as you can. And as in this case, mine is a bit long here, but I needed this to make it to be absolutely crystal clear what that particular item is. Because these 2 items or these 2 commands are very, very important. Quit AZMAT system or reset AZMAT. So this one, you have a letter followed by at least 1 space. I'm putting 2 spaces to make it crystal clear that the first letter is not part of the actual command. It's just a space, and then means basically in early versions of Excel, not in this particular version or later version of Excel, that ability, if you like, functionality is taken off. The idea was if you have J there, you press J, Control J, or something, and it'll carry on that command without you having to click. But in later versions, you have to. As you can see, there is no underline below the V or J or K or L or whatever. So you need the command aspect is taken off. It's not there. But in earlier versions, as we will see, we can. But we'll go through that later. So V, then followed by a couple of spaces, then activate stroke open AZMAT data file. This is your AZMAT data file that it always opens. If I close this menu, click that. If I close this is your AZMAT data file. I'll actually just first thing before we continue, just save, as I like to do that. It puts me the date and time. Save AZMAT data file. It'll put current date and the time. So it's 12 noon actually on 12th of July 2017. So if I go here, click add-ins, back to the J. So this is the AZMAT data file. In my case, this particular file is called AA.xlsx. On earlier versions, it would be AA.xls. So in your case, whatever two-letter initials you choose, your file will be created. So if you say KY, use for example, then your file will be called ky.xlsx, and that's the file that will be open every time you start AZMAT System. It'll be created for you automatically, even the very first time. So don't worry about it, how to actually create one, because initially you would not have that, because I would be providing you the basics whole system. Then the system, when you start AZMAT System very first time, and when you enter your two-letter ID, AZMAT System will look in that particular area, user files area. If the file does not exist, if it exists, it will open it. If it does not, then it will create it. Simple as that. So that you don't have to worry about it, how it's done, but it will be done. So in this case, if I go back here, remember I'm not using any Excel file open command or anything. I'm always using, you always have to use, in order to use AZMAT System, click in the add-ins here in these later versions. Earlier versions, as you will see, all the Excel menus, like these here, we see here J, K, X, G, and so on, they will already be added here on the same line with the other Excel menus, as we will see in a different tutorial. And then you do not need to click add-ins to go. So this add-in is only for later versions of Excel, like in this case, from Excel in here. This particular version is Excel 2010. So right-click add-in to access the AZMAT System menu. So J menu we're going through right now. So the first command is V -- activate or open AZMAT data file. So if you click that, if I was in somewhere else, AZMAT System file was not the first file. So for example, let me show you. If I go into the K menu and open the ZRUSD for view. Right, I'm in ZRUSD.xls. I've opened it as read-only. If I look at it here, switch windows command, I have two files. So ZRUSD, which is the current file there, which is SY sticked, and then I have second file is the AA.xlsx, but that's my AZMAT data file. So if I click there, I'll go there. So if this was the current file, you will see nothing should happen because it's already here. So we'll do that both ways. Add-ins, J menu, if I click activate or open AZMAT data file, basically you're telling AZMAT System will activate the file if it's already open. Activate means go to that file, bring it here to the front so you can see it, or open it and activate it. Obviously, it will be the file which will be the one you will see. So if I click that, I'm already on that file, so nothing should really happen. Here, I'm already there. Right, let's change the file. We'll switch it to go onto the ZRUSD or any other file there, if you had it any other file open. For example, in this case, so I've opened this race or curve file specifically just to show you that it does what I'm saying it should do. Right, so we have two files in memory and open. There are actually other files, at least 8 or 9 files, which are hidden, which if you see here, I'll just close that menu there. Unhide window. See, all these files are open in AZMAT System. So we have 3, 6, 8. 8 files are open. There are other times there'll be another 1 or 2 files also will be open as required, but they're all hidden. So if I click OK, it will unhide it. Some files will require a password, others will not. I'm going to cancel. I'm not going to, just to let you know that these other files are also in memory, but they are hidden. Cancel that. So the only two files which are not hidden and are in view here are these two files. And currently I am on the ZR file. That's the one with the tick. So if I go, so wherever you are, many files you have it open and not hidden. If you want to quickly go through, find out where to your file, for example, in here, the system will only show up to 8 or 9 files actually open. If you might have 10, 20 files open, you can't be bothered to go through there and go through all those other more files and so on. What you could do is simply go add-ins, J menu, activate AZMAT data files. So right now I'm on the ZR file. So if I say activate or open, there. It's open already, so it doesn't need to open, so it's just simply activate it. So that's all it does. It doesn't do any calculations on it or anything. Just opens it. If it's not open, or activates it, that is, makes it to the front of all the other windows, so you can see it if that is already open. And the same, and now here, so now we'll go to the next one, next command. You can see I put up a separator line in between this command and all these others, and then another group, because they all, think of them as these separate lines as paragraphs, if you like. In a paragraph, you're talking about one particular topic, and then when you want to talk about different topic, you write it in different paragraph. So separator, which will be simply blank line. You can't have a space in here as separator, so I'm putting visibly using these hyphens or minus signs, if you like, to separate it as a separator line. I could have actually had a space, just a dot, in fact, if I wanted to, as a separator. So in which case I will have almost a blank line. But I wanted to visibly make sure it's quite clear that it is a separator line. So I've used the hyphens or minus sign, if you like, to say as a separator line. Again, this line has no command. There's no command. If you click there, nothing should happen because there's nothing there. If I click there, it's just simply menu has disappeared. It doesn't actually do anything useful. It's actually a command. If I click, there's nothing really there to do. Right, now, so the next item is change own password. So this changes current user's own password of AZMAT system. We'll briefly just go through all these and then go in detail of each menu command up to here. So change J is a change own password. So again, these, as I said earlier on, in this version of Excel, later version, that's Excel here, we're talking about Excel 2010, the underlined item, this underlined part of it, the first letter is not displayed anymore because it cannot, it will not carry out a command just by pressing Control J, for example, or just J or K or whatever. So you do not see, but in earlier versions you will see we could without actually even going through that. So change own password changes current user's own password of AZMAT system. So whatever password you had before, then it will change it to what you want. Display details of any user. So displays individual user details, including their password. Of course, this different users in AZMAT system have different levels of authority. So it will be probably, for example, a manager on the dealing room floor will have that authority to actually display details of any user. So password, and also they have the authority to change it as well. Not any user can do it. For example, so if there are many, so the next command is change password of any user. So changes individual password of any user of AZMAT system. So this definitely, this command could only be carried out by someone who has authority to do so. Not just this, any command, different levels of user. For example, you may have on a dealing room for various dealers, 10, 20, 100 dealers, the manager will be able to change the password. Maybe the deputy manager, perhaps, will be able to see display details of any user, but not actually change. So you have different levels of authority within AZMAT system, and you will be able to create your own computer systems by following those techniques, which I'll show you, which are already designed and developed and are within AZMAT system. So when you buy AZMAT system, you get all those commands. All the files will be, they are protected, but you will be given the passwords of all the files. So you'll be able to do and see how the programming is carried out in between, in the background. We will go through this in different tutorials, the programming part of it as well later on. So you can change any password of any user. M, add user to AZMAT system. Adds a new user to AZMAT system, as it says. Again, this particular one may be available perhaps to deputy manager level as well, not just manager. Perhaps depends on the company. Whatever they want to decide, they will decide who should have what level of authority, as we'll see later on. When you start actually looking at we'll look at the programming part of it, AZMAT system. Different users have different levels of authority. And this one, remove user from AZMAT system. So removes an existing user from AZMAT system, whereas add user will be adding a new user to AZMAT system. Then now, because it's a completely different group of commands, so I've used another separator line there. You do not have to use these. In fact, if you have more commands than you can fit in on the screen, you may not have the luxury of adding a separator commands at every step you like to take. For example, let me show you here. Z menu. As you can see, I've got lots and lots of commands here. Might have liked to actually separate some of these, but I could only have this there. I used one there, another one there, and that's it. That's the last. Or the Y menu for the risk management. So there are so many that I can't fit in here. I have actually have to use a scroll bar. But in this case, so I have grouped most of the, like lots of commands together. It would have been nice to actually separate even further, but didn't want to make it even longer than necessary. So there are, for example, prepare volatility correlation files in a group, get single volatility, get single correlation in a separate little bit of group, and so on. So you decide what you want, how to separate them, and so on. You do not have to use the separator lines if you do not want to. They are just for your benefit. AZMAT system will work quite happily if all these commands were just one after another, whatever you wanted. So this command R, although in this version of Excel and later versions of Excel, as I said, these letters do not have any meaning as such, because you cannot start reset AZMAT system command by simply pressing R on your computer keyboard or Control R or so. But in earlier versions, we should be able to do it, and as we will see, I will demonstrate to you by using an older version of Excel, and you will see what it means, all that. So reset AZMAT system. Files beginning, save files beginning with user ID. So save files with beginning with the current user's ID. In this case, my ID I'm using is AA, so all my files that begin with AA, save it. I'm telling AZMAT system and reset it. Basically, if you made a mess of some commands in between, you don't know what you're doing, you want it to go back to the original version of particular AZMAT as you started, then you would use reset AZMAT system. So it's just that session of AZMAT, not the entire as you bought at the beginning. It doesn't mean that. Remember, reset AZMAT simply means that particular session, this particular current version of AZMAT system, as in your computer memory, as you're using. You made some mess of some of the files, you're not sure what you've done, this and that, so you want to start fresh, if you like. So it's equivalent to like it is, and save, in this case, as it says, save files beginning with user ID. Your own files will save, close all the files, and start AZMAT again. Next command is quit AZMAT, and you have a choice. One is save files beginning with user ID. Let's just very quickly go back to this reset again. So the reset, what it does is really exits AZMAT, closing all files. Exits the current session of AZMAT, closing all files. But in this case here, as we got in bracket, we got save files beginning with user ID, then restarts AZMAT system. Right? That's all it does. Closes all your files, closes, saves all your files beginning with user ID, your user ID, and closes all the other AZMAT files, program files, system files, whatever they are, closes all of them, and then restarts AZMAT system. Whereas a Q, quit AZMAT, save files beginning with user ID. So this one exits AZMAT, quits Excel, leaves you in Windows environment. So if you say quit AZMAT, it's going to, as in here in brackets, save files beginning with user ID. So it'll save all your own files, all the files that you have created, as you will see later on using different versions. So for example, in risk management, lots and lots of files you'll create. Every time you create a report, it'll create that file beginning with your ID, your two-letter ID. In this case, my case will be AA. And many other files like using SSWAP model or any of the calculation models. All those files will be created by AZMAT system using your two-letter ID. So it'll quit AZMAT command will save all your files, the files that begin with your user ID, and exits AZMAT, and also quits Excel as well. Leaves you in Windows environment. Z, quit AZMAT, do not save any files. So the only difference between this Q, quit AZMAT, and Z, quit AZMAT is, as it says in the bracket here, the Z part, this command quits AZMAT, and we are saying do not save any files. So including your own files, beginning with your user ID, it will not save if you use this command. It is simply quit, finish, outside AZMAT and Excel, without saving any files. Do not worry if you by mistake you think, oh, you might have clicked the wrong command. any of these commands you will see, or most of these, like these, which like quit or reset, either of these quit commands, it'll actually give you a chance. You'll have an AZMAT system, always is very useful, helpful. It'll put up a message asking you, do you really wish to continue with this command? Tell you what it's going to do. And then if you say yes, only when you confirm, then it'll continue with the command. If you don't, it'll stop and cancel that command. So you will have a chance, as you will see. H for help. View AZMAT help file. Now, again, this particular command, view AZMAT help file, because Microsoft has changed the help engine, help file, which was used to create the AZMAT help file. It is different now. In later versions of Excel, it will not open that particular file. It will actually give you a message saying what you have to do in order to see. And we will go through in later tutorial in quite detail all about the AZMAT System help file, showing you in early versions you could see it, it will open it. Not only open it, you can also use the help for every single command used in AZMAT System. You can get the help on it online, but in later versions of Excel, it's not available online. Although in some versions, like Excel, the Windows versions, it's not the Excel, it's actually the Windows versions, 8, 7 onwards, you could still see it but you have to download certain file from Microsoft Download Center in order to view that particular help file. We will see that. We'll go into that later on at a later tutorial, in a later tutorial. So now all that, as you can see, reset, quit, viewers must all put in a group. If it makes sense, put them all in a group. Use a separator line when you create your own menus. As you will see later on when you go through here, the end menu I've created especially for you, the user. So you will be able to create your own, add your own commands to Excel system to be used within AZMAT System. For example, all these commands are XL VBA commands, and up to here, all these are the separate line Excel macro commands. We'll go that in later on. So you will be able to create and add your own commands to begin with. Step by step, you will learn. Just by adding your command line, just maybe one line there, and then it'll be in here added on, and you will be able to use it within AZMAT System. Then the next step will be you'll be able to actually create it from the beginning and how. So we will go in through various stages, step by step, so you will be able to eventually be able to create all your own menus and add them to Excel. Develop your own system at a future date. Right, in here, so this one is the view. So we've done that, the open it, access of model. So again, just like if you remember, the first one, activate or open AZMAT data file, these commands here also work in the same way. So they will either open them, in this case, access of model. Either open it, it will either open it. If it doesn't exist already in memory, if it's not already open, it will open it. If it's open, and like we saw earlier on, in here, I go to say another file. So if I'm in ZRUSD file and I want to go to AZMAT data files, I could use these switch window command, or I could in this space, if I was here or in AZMAT data file, it doesn't really matter which file I'm in here. When I click from add-in, J menu, click the access swap model. If that file is already open, but not in view here in the front, so it will activate it and bring it here to the front so I can see it. If it's not open, then it will open it from the AZMAT System program directory. Remember, all AZMAT System files, the main program file, and other system files, this will be one of the AZMAT System files. All these files are stored in the AZMAT program directory or folder, if you like. Then the next one is bonds calculation model, bonds calc model. Opens or activates bond calculation model that has with bonds with calls, puts, sinking fund, partly paid, different types of bonds. We will learn in a later tutorial exactly what they are, what's the difference between, and why they're called like that, these funny names, if you like. If this subject is completely new to you, you might find it very strange that these things are called like bonds with calls, puts, sinking fund, bonds with sinking fund, or partly paid bonds, and so on. But they are a specialist. This is a specialist topic for investment bank use. And in an investment bank environment, it is not funny at all. Nothing strange about saying a bond with call or put or with sinking fund. It's a normal business language. It describes a certain type of bond. Then we have here floating rate notes, FRN. FRN, so floating rate notes. So it's using S as a small s here to make it clear, so that so I wouldn't call it FRNS all in capitals, but FRN, floating rate notes, and S denotes that it's in plural. So FRNs, we'll call it. You would not call this as FRNS. You call it FRNs or FRN for one, if you like. So floating rate notes, FRNs, opens or activates floating rate notes calculation model. So this also is a separate calculation model, different to the bond calculation model, different to the access swap model, its own calculation model. The next one is convertible bonds. Opens or activates convertible bonds calculation model. So remember, all these here, below this here, from this onwards here, they're all 12 calculation models within AZMAT systems. If I scroll down here, we can see them all. So convertible bonds calculation models. So just by clicking that, it will open it or activate it. You do not have to worry about having two versions of any of these calculation models in memory, because AZMAT system will not open another model, calculation model, if it's already open. If it's open, it will simply activate it. That means bring it to the front so you can see it. If it's other, it's not hidden as in hidden outside the actual. For example, if I click here, look at the windows, these two files are open but not hidden. Whereas if I click on here, unhide window command, I'll just close that, click again, unhide window. These files are also open, but they're all hidden from view. So you can't just, for example, in here, as in there, if you remember, it is 1 and 2. If you click there, that will become to the front. It will come to the front. You cannot do that because some of these files will be protected and can only be viewed if you knew the password. Then, so if you click OK, nothing will happen. It'll actually, well, something will happen because if it's hidden with a password, AZMAT System will ask you for the appropriate password. If it's not protected with the password, then it'll open it. It'll unhide, sorry, not open it, it'll unhide it. So you can see it. Right now, I can only see the actual file names because they are hidden. They're calling it unhide workbook. So in Microsoft Excel, they're calling it workbook, but workbook is like a file. Think of it as a file. So each of these are separate workbooks. So you can click over that and then say OK. And if it's not hidden with a password, it'll simply unhide it. If it's hidden with a password, it will not unhide it. It will ask you for the appropriate password. And only if you enter the correct password, it will unhide it. Otherwise, the window, that particular workbook or file will remain hidden. So I'm going to cancel it right now. That is just to show you that we have these other files also open, but hidden. Whereas all the files here, when you switch Windows command, none of them are currently hidden. And so there's no question of asking you for a password to show you. If it did have a password, for example, if you're using that unhide window command, if you had made it unhidden, so not hidden, then it'll just become part of one of these files. So if it does become more than 9, so then you will have more windows, and when you click that, but just by clicking, it will bring it to the front. But remember, there is a difference. It's already not hidden. All the files here, they're not hidden. Just by clicking, you will have access to it, even if they were originally hidden. Right, let's get back here to the original here. So we were talking about any of these files. For example, the convertible bonds, you do not need to worry about opening more than one. It'll only open once, one version. And if that version, if it's already in memory, open here, it'll simply activate it, bring it to the front. Then now we have the bond warrants. I'm going to slide further down so we can see all of them. Bond warrants opens or activates bond warrants calculation model. So we have warrants on bonds. We will learn all these things later on, exactly what they are in the future tutorial and the difference, because when we open it, you'll see. Some of these are very small compared with this, like I said before in an earlier tutorial, asset swap model is a star model, calculation model. Very complex, very much in detail, in-depth calculation model, equivalent to all these other 11 calculation models put together. The next one in terms of complexity is the bonds calculation model, then the floating rate notes model. All the other ones, they are very, very simple. Some of them, the calculations carried out while just by changing, if you change certain items here within the model, the results are displayed on the screen there and then, straight. Where other commands, like here in asset swap model, or bonds, or floating rows, some of these calculations are carried out as you change any information there, whereas others, by changing information, you have to then use one of the AZMAT system commands, for example, from the X menu, these commands to actually calculate the result, like present value, yield, present value and yield, internal rate of return, IRR, so on. They will be calculated by using either one of these commands from the menu, X menu, or in bonds model, we'll have G menu. As you can see here, bond model commands are G menu, bond, and FRN calculations menu. So all the bond model commands are there. Then we have bond and FRN calculation commands, two together, which apply to both of those. And these commands below here, and if I scroll down further, these commands apply only to FRN model commands. So these four commands will be applicable only when you have FRN model open. These commands here, from there up to there, are only applicable to when you have bond calculation model open, so on. Close all models, for example, in here, X close all model. It'll close any model. Doesn't have to be G. That's why it says close all models, all calculation models which are currently open. This one closes the current model, the one which is active, which is right in front here when you use the command. Let's go back to the J menu. So we have the bond warrants command, which simply opens or activates bond warrants calculation model. The other one is equity warrants calculation model. Then you have the currency warrants calculation model, and so on. Commodity warrants calculation model. Then below, we have again a separated line here because these are money market instruments and so on. So I've separated them from warrants. These are all warrants, as you can see. Warrants on bond, equity, currency, commodity. These are different calculation models. So the SSO model, bond model, FRN, convertible bond warrants. And so these four are kind of grouped together. So that's why I put them together and separated them by separated line. Now we have below this are the money market instruments. So for example, here, as you notice, if I go down further, so we have the money market instrument, example, CDs, yield basis. Again, if this subject is completely new to you, do not worry too much. As you start using AZMAT system and read the help file and the actual calculation model of each of these here, as we open it, you will see the formulae. What's the difference between this one, for example, yield basis, and then yield basis, one coupon, and so on. So here, and all the price basis. So yield basis, price basis, discount basis, all these are different, some subtle difference in versions, but they're all money market instruments, they're called. So money market instrument yield basis opens or activates that particular model, calculation model of that. Opens or activates money market instrument, example, CDs model, quoted on yield basis. Whereas the other one, next one, is yield basis, one coupon. So this one opens or activates money market instrument, example, CDs model, quoted on yield basis, one coupon. So it has one coupon. It's still on yield basis, but yield basis, one coupon. And then we have here money market instrument, example, FRCDs, price basis, and opens or activates money market instrument, example, FRCDs model. quoted on price basis. And lastly, we have the open money market instrument example bills, discount basis. So open select or activates money market instrument example bills model quoted on discount basis. So all these commands may be completely new to you. You may not be familiar now as we speak, but they will become familiar to you as you start using AZMAT system on a daily basis on your own computer and read through the help file and look through the actual calculation model with all the different difference in the formulae, but in between. And if you are keen to learn, you will learn very easily. As time goes by, they'll just become very familiar to you. That is provided you want to learn that. If you're not interested in that detail in the financial and the investment banking calculation models, do not have to learn them. But you can learn how to develop a computer system using several files, and how to, for example, in SSWAP model, or the bond model, or the FRN model, floating rate models, it uses a database as well, where you will see each particular model, each transaction is saved in a database and loaded previous one in memory. Make some changes, dealer might make some changes, and either save it over the original or save it as a new transaction or deal in the database file, which will be created by AZMAT system, and you learn how to do all that later on. So even if you're not interested in the actual calculation parts of these, don't worry. You can learn, if you're more interested in actually system development part of it, then you learn how to do that. So think of it, keep an open mind, basically, to see what you want to do. So let's go briefly through each of these commands, a little bit more description. So the first one here, activate or open AZMAT system data file. Activates AZMAT data file. If this file is closed, reopens it. Remember, why is us saying if this file is closed? Because AZMAT system, when it starts, always opens the AZMAT data file for the current user. So if the current user ID, like in my case, is AA, which you have to enter in order, whenever you start AZMAT system, you have to enter the 2-letter ID. At that time, it will open or create a new file if the original one doesn't exist. If that user didn't exist in the current file, user directory or user folder, where the user folder file, where the user files are stored. If that user 2-letter ID file didn't exist, it'll create one and it'll open it. That's why it says here, J menu, there it says activate, open AZMAT data file. That means if this file is closed, reopens it. Reason I'm saying if this file is closed, because AZMAT system had opened it when you started AZMAT system. So the only way it will be closed is if you, the user, has used a command to close it, or use the Excel command to close it. So if you click it, it'll simply open it if it's closed, or activate it. So bring it to the front. So AZMAT data file is open, it is displayed. Note that if the user has closed this file for whatever reason, it is reopened and displayed. So that's what this command does. And you will see when we later on look at the actual programming commands, that how and when it actually, how does it do it? How does the program find out? And you will learn all those commands. From the programming part of view, then you will see which is how AZMAT System A finds out, is it open, is it in memory, is it closed? It's not a a magician. It's all done by program, by carrying out various commands within the programming file. So as we will see later on, what it does, which commands it uses when we go and look into the actual program commands within in the actual main program file in a later tutorial. Right now, we're looking these commands from a user's point of view, as you will use. Later on, we will look into the programming from programmer's point of view, from system developer's point of view. Right, the next one is change own password command. Changes, excuse me, changes current user's own password of AZMAT System. This command first prompts the user to enter the current password. This is to ensure that the person changing the password is indeed the person who originally started the current session of AZMAT System. If and only if the current password is entered correctly, the user is prompted to enter the new password. So it's not just going to change your own password. For example, you were using this system. You know your password. You went away from your desk, say in an office you're using. Someone else comes and says, right, I want to change the password. So first thing, if you use the command add-ins, menu, change your own password. Imagine if you were the genuine user and someone else came in and changed their password, you will not be able to get in your system. So AZMAT System will only change the password provided you can enter the current password correctly. Otherwise, it'll just be no point. It'd be a silly system if it actually just simply change the password just because someone here uses this particular command to change their own password. The only way it can know you are the genuine user of AZMAT System who should be able to change his password in two cases. Either you are the actual user, so you know your current password, you want to change it, or someone manager level who has a higher level authority. That particular person can change any user's password if they wanted to, for whatever reason. So this command, that's why this command first asks the user to enter the current password. This is to ensure that the person changing the password is indeed the person who originally started the current session of AZMAT System. If and only if the current password is entered correctly, the user is prompted to enter the new password. If invalid data is entered for a new password, the user is prompted again to enter valid data for a new password before proceeding further. For example, you can't have a space as a part of your password. It will tell you, or you can't, it's a password. In this case, we are using 4 numbers. So it will have to be 4 numbers. You could use if you will see later on, it'll actually tell you when you're entering what it should be a valid data for entering the password. So if you enter 5 digits, for example, it won't accept 3, it won't accept. If it's 4, has to be 4, then you must enter 4. Simple as that. So if an invalid data is entered for a new password, the user is prompted again to enter valid data for a new password before proceeding further. Note that this command can be cancelled at any time by clicking on the cancel button. So you have given the choice, always there will be the cancel button to cancel a command, or OK button after you have entered the correct data to proceed with the command. So if a valid password is entered, the user is then asked to confirm the newly entered password before proceeding further. So you should remember your own password, or if you can't remember, you might forget, then I suggest you write it down somewhere. So then you can actually look at it. Maybe not exactly, it's not a big deal that if someone else saw it, you can always change it or write it in a form, not in the usual way as you would enter it in AZMAT System. Write it in a slightly different way. We'll go into that later if you need to. But I'm sure you are quite capable of writing and creating your own password. And it's only a 4-digit one. So if a valid password is entered, the user is then asked to confirm the newly entered password before proceeding further. For example, if you can't even remember just now, you've entered this password, and if you, on confirmation dialog box, you enter it incorrectly, then it will not proceed with the command. You'll have to start again. But if you enter it correctly the second time to confirm it, then the new password is then stored. New password is then stored, and it immediately replaces the old password of the current user. Right? So only then it will do. Now this part here, all these things, you will learn how to program in AZMAT System a command like that. So a simple command here, it just says here one change on password. So unless I enter it correctly to begin with, and then can confirm the new password by entering it twice, it will not change it. It will only change it when the user can confirm it. Display details of any user. So displays individual user details, including their password. So this particular command can only be carried out by someone who has a higher level of authority, like a manager level, than ordinary users. Other users at the same level as you, if you are just meant to use the system but not have the authority to change or look at other people's password, this command will actually tell you whether you can use this command or not. So display details of any user. Displays individual user details. So if you enter the ID of a particular user, so whatever, JR, for example, if you enter JR, then it'll display details of that user, including their password, whatever, if that was the ID used by the user. If that ID didn't exist, obviously it'll tell you it doesn't exist. Right, displays individual user details, including their password. Note that only certain people have the authority to use this command. AZMAT System displays the message if the current user does not have access to this command. So don't worry about actually using it accidentally, any of these commands, because if you do not have authority, it will tell you so and will not proceed with the command. For example, change password of any user. If you do not have that authority, it will say so, that you do not have authority to use this command and will not proceed with the command. This command first prompts the user to enter the current password. First thing. This is to ensure that the person using this command is indeed the person who originally started the current session of AZMAT System. For example, why that is so, you might wonder. If, for example, a manager is using it, this is any user who does not have authority of a manager level, for example. Right, I'm in AZMAT system. This is, imagine this is the manager's desk, the manager's computer. And some manager obviously have the authority to look at other users' command and to change users' password and so on. But it simply popped out, is away from the desk. And some other user, ordinary user who does not have the manager's level, the authority at manager's level, wanted to see another user's password or change another user's password for whatever reason. They could just go on the manager's computer, for example, click Add in, go to J menu, and say, right, display details of any user. So if this was not the real the manager, although it's the manager's computer, but the person using it is not the manager, then they will be able to see the another person's ID. So all this authority level would be completely pointless, useless. So that's why this command first prompts the user to enter the current password. So if you enter here, change password of any user, the command, first thing it'll do is ask you for the current password to ensure that you are indeed the manager who had started the current session, who has the authority to use that command. So not everyone will be able to, just because they went in to use a manager's computer, will be able to change it or do any of these other commands which are available only to manager level. That's why this prompt first prompts the user to enter the current password. This is to ensure that the person using this command is indeed the person who originally started the current session of AZMAT system. If and only if the current password is entered correctly and the user has the authority to use this command, AZMAT system proceeds further with this command. So this command always asks, first thing, current user's password, checks whether that user, what level of authority they have, and you will learn how to do this within AZMAT system, within programming or part of AZMAT system when we go into programming part. Then it proceeds. If the current password is entered correctly, but the current user does not have the authority to use this command, AZMAT system will let them know that they can't use this command. So let's assume that this is a genuinely current user, genuine manager level person who has the authority to use that command, change password of any user. Then after entering the current password, and as my system has checked that they have the authority to use this command, it proceeds further. The current user is then prompted to enter the two-letter ID of the user whose details are required. Right, current user, that is the manager, for example, or the person has the authority. Now, as the system established that they have the authority to use this command, they're prompted to enter the two-letter ID of the user whose details are required. So we are in here first, display details of any user. So when you enter the two-letter ID of that user, note that this ID must be a valid and existing user's ID. If invalid data is entered for an ID, this user is prompted again to enter valid data for an ID before proceeding further. Note that this command can be cancelled at any time by clicking on the Cancel button. When a valid and existing user's ID is entered, the relevant details are displayed on the screen, including their password. Change password of any user. Now we'll go through very briefly here. I'm just going to go through briefly, not going in very much detail, and later on we'll actually do each of these commands in a future tutorial. So the change password of any user changes individual password of any user of AZMAT system. This is very similar to the other one. Although the display user may be at a deputy manager or a junior manager level, whereas the change password will be a senior manager's level, who has the authority to do so. There are various levels of authority within AZMAT system for all the users, right from the beginning, absolute beginning user who could only just view, or not even view certain files, to the person who can change every single user's details or decide who can use AZMAT system within that particular company. So, changes individual password of any user of AZMAT system. Please note that only certain people have the authority to use this command. AZMAT system displays a message if the current user does not have access to this command. This command first prompts the user to enter the current password, just like we did before, and so on. And then it goes on very similar to the last one. Add user to AZMAT system. Again, a new level of user being added. Not all the users will have access to this command. Goes through various systems, various questions, and only proceeds with the command if the user has the authority to do so. Removes user from AZMAT system. Again, this is at a manager level command, because it's quite serious. You're stopping a user from using AZMAT system. Reset AZMAT. Save files beginning with user ID. Now, exits AZMAT. This is your ordinary user command. Now we are back to the ordinary user commands here. All those commands above here, remove, add, change password, display. All these commands that are at a high level of authority, whereas change on password is for every single person, user of AZMAT system. As long as they can show to AZMAT system that they are the genuine current user, they know the current user, current password, they will be able to change. But the other commands are at a manager or senior manager level. This is back to user. Any user who's currently using AZMAT system, they will be able to reset. So exits AZMAT, closing all files, then restarts AZMAT system. This command saves only those files where the first two characters of the file name are the same as the user ID. Save files beginning with user ID. And then it closes all other files without saving any changes. The whole idea is you'll use it when you have actually made some changes you didn't mean to make changes to AZMAT system. So that's why it'll close all other files, including system files. The only files it'll save are the current user's files that begin with the user ID, which they used when they started AZMAT system. So it closes all other files without saving any changes before finishing the AZMAT session. AZMAT session is then restarted for the same user. Note that it does not ask for the user ID again, because it already knows who is actually using this particular session of AZMAT system. So he knows your user ID, so it will simply begin AZMAT system without asking for user ID. The next command, so basically this command resets, puts the user back to the point where the user had just entered his or her ID at the beginning of a new AZMAT system. So it starts a new AZMAT session from that point. Next command is quit AZMAT, save files beginning with user ID. exits AZMAT, quits Excel, and leaves you in Windows environment. This command saves only those files where the first two characters of file name are the same as the user ID, and then it closes all other files without saving any changes before finishing the AZMAT and Excel sessions. Right? You are saying quit AZMAT, save files beginning with user ID. If you wanted to save other files which do not begin with user ID, some of the files you've created which don't begin with user ID, save them, both in this command and in reset one. Save it yourself if you wanted them to be saved. Because AZMAT System will only save files beginning with your user ID, and then it will quit without saving any other files, changes. It will quit the AZMAT session and the Excel session. Note, no other files are saved, even if they have changed since they were last opened. Therefore, if a file has a name which does not begin with the user ID, and it's required by you that any changes to the file should be saved, then use either overwrite original file command or appropriate save as command before using this command. So do not use this quit command. So you use your own overwrite original file command or use the save as command before using this particular. For example, if you were using a rates file, save curve changes, or so on. Or in the utility, if you go and have a look at the utility menu, overwrite original file. So if you go to that particular file you want to save, it does not begin with your user ID. If you go from add-in, view menu, utility menu, you can use this command B, overwrite original file. It will save that particular file even if it did not begin with your user ID, or use the appropriate save command to save AZMAT data. That anyway, AZMAT data file will be saved, but you might use some other save curve changes or so on, some other command if you wanted to save that. Before you use that file which will only save your files beginning with the user ID. So on the other hand, if a file has name which begins with the user ID and it is required that any changes to the file should not, right? So if you made a mess with your own user ID, any file that begins with your user ID. Remember, this is not the only file. The AZMAT data file is not the only file that begins with your user ID. There are other files later on, as we will see later on in these SS-swap model, bond calculation, or FRN calculation model, all the many risk management query files. Once you made some database query command, you've used those files are also AZMAT System creates it with your user ID. So if you have made a mess of those files, if you didn't want them to be saved, right? Because there are times when you do not want those particular files to be saved, then use the command. So in that case, you should not use this first. You should come out of this and, for example, come back here in utility menu. Let me just see here. So for example, if you have a particular command file, if a particular file which you do not want to save any changes. So in the utility menu, just like the overwrite original file you have, which you want to save changes, if you go down here, you will see that there is a command here which says close the current file. Do not save changes. So if you do not want to save changes to a file which begins, for example, with your user ID, you want the original version left alone, use this command, because that quit command save files beginning with user ID. In here, J menu, save files beginning with user ID will save all files beginning with your user ID. So remember, if you did not want any files beginning with your user ID saved, before using that command, go to Utility menu, go to that file must be the current file, and then you use the close current file, do not save changes. In this case, it will not save changes to that particular file, because that is what you require it to do. Then, by all means, once you've done all the files, one or more files which you do not want to save any changes, use this command. Then go ahead to the J menu and go and use the AZMAT System save files beginning with user ID, if that is what you want. AZMAT System can be started again as follows by double-clicking the AZMAT icon, which would be on your desktop if that is what we have set it to do. But we'll leave it for now. We won't go into that. That's not here from the Excel menus, from the AZMAT System menu. Right, we have now, the other one here is quit AZMAT and Excel. Do not save any files. So quits AZMAT session, the current session of AZMAT System, and Excel without saving any files. As it says so here, you're saying quit AZMAT, do not save any files, even your files that begin with the user ID. If you want to do that, if that is what you wish, by all means use this command. But be aware that that is exactly, it will do exactly what it's saying. No files are saved. Right? This command finishes AZMAT and Excel sessions without saving any files, because that's what it says it will do. If you use this command, it will always ask to confirm. Do you really want to do that? Yes, okay, it'll do. If you say cancel, it'll cancel the command. But if that's what you want, no files are saved, even if they have changed since they were last opened. Therefore, if it is required to save changes to any files, then use either overwrite original file command, as we saw from the U menu, utility menu, overwrite original file command, or appropriate save as command before using this command. So for example, you have in the K menu, you have the save current changes or whatever, or you indeed use the Excel file save as command if that's what you want. So when we say here, J menu, quit AZMAT, do not save any files, be aware of what is actually you're asking it to do. It will do exactly what you've asked. Last one, this one here, we're going to right now, we're not really going to, I'm just going to mention view AZMAT help file. It's available from the J menu in here, and also from the utilities menu, U, view AZMAT help file. Same command available from two different menus because it doesn't have to be there. It's just put for convenience. Utility menus will have that is also there. But it's the same command as you'll see. So you can use the same command in two or three or as many menus as you wish within AZMAT System. But they're all going to the same program line, which will open the AZMAT System help file, online help file for viewing. But as I said earlier on, it is not available in later versions of Excel in the current form. So we will go through, see how you will see that if you want to. But in earlier versions, it is available. So we will now, and these other commands, there's not much to say here other than simply, because there's no passwords entry or anything like in here, all these here checks. Only check is made here for these commands below is if that particular, for example, bond calculation model is checked. Is it already open? If it is open, it will activate it. Activate it means basically go to that particular file or bring it to the front so then you can see it. Simple as that. That's all it does. If it's not open, it will open it. Not only it will open it, but also it will prepare make sure you have the other files. For example, behind it, you have the database file for SSWAP database in which all the different transactions or deals are saved. And they are handy. And then for SSWAP, bonds calculation, and the floating rate notes, FRN, calculation models. These have associated database commands as well, files which are open. And we will get to that when we actually use each of these commands in detail in a later session of AZMAT System. So for now, we'll go back here. I'm just going to close this particular session of Excel. And I'm just going to save. Go to Utility Manager, save as my data file. It will enter the current date of time. So now it is, as we speak, 1:18 p.m. in the afternoon on the 12th of July. So we will go through other menus in detail, and this particular menu as well in quite detail later on, actually carry on each and every command as we saw in here. For example, we will go through these changes, change own password, display users, and all at different levels in different sessions. So for example, one session I'll open, I cannot, then I have to have the authority at a manager level, and you probably would be better to have that if you're the only user, manager level authority, then you can carry on any of these commands, as you will be controlling AZMAT system on your system or on your computer. But if there were several users, as in a typical investment bank, there will be several dealers, there will be maybe a senior dealer, and there will be a manager level, and there will also be a senior manager for the entire dealing room floor, where there could be hundreds of dealers. So that particular person, that top person, or maybe in addition, they also might have other senior managers who will have the authority to add a user, new user to AZMAT system, or remove any user from AZMAT system, or change password of any user, or even just to see the details of any user. So it's not just the password, various other, what level of authority they have, set the levels of authority, and so on. It is all fun. You will see it is quite satisfying programming. You will see when we actually go into programming part of AZMAT system how you can do all these. So all these commands you see here, they're not Excel commands. These are commands created using Excel commands to create AZMAT system. So all these here checks, for example, to carry out, get your own password, new password, this and that. All Excel commands are being used, but used in a way controlled by AZMAT system. And you will be able to develop systems like this. This, for example, here, change own password, display details of any user, change password of any user, add user to AZMAT system, remove user from AZMAT system or your own system, whatever you like to call it when you develop it. These whole 5 aspects, these commands can be used in any system you develop in your life, future life, later on. They do not have to be in this particular system. You're quite free to use the techniques you will learn and use them in your own system. Not particularly in an investment banking, this system, the current system is AZMAT system. So these are applicable to any system you develop. Really very sophisticated system, level of programming is there, and the background can be adapted. And similarly, the same here, these 4 commands as well. Reset, so whatever system you're using, same thing applies. Quit that particular system, beginning with user ID or some other one if you want to call it. And do not save any files or review the help file and so on. Can be used in any system. So the commands you learn, and here, these calculation model, in this case, happen to be calculation models. And in your system, you might develop something else, some other file. Maybe for example, if you're developing system for a particular business, for a particular company, it may apply only to that particular company. May not necessarily be all 12 here calculation models as I have, and they don't have to be calculation models. They could be any particular files for that particular business, different aspects of it. Right? Accounts, for example. So you could have the accounts for a particular department or company of that particular very large company, different sub companies, so on, and where. So you could use the same technique basically to open special files that are applicable to your system. As you will see later on, very, very easily you can adapt AZMAT system for your own system when you come to develop it. When you get your enough confidence, you learn how to do that, you will be able to do that very, very easily and create your own menus. So you may not necessarily need all 9 menus as I have here, because this is a really very, very large system. It has this asset swap model alone, Z menu, as you can see here. All these commands apply to asset swap model alone. Very, very sophisticated calculation model, financial calculation model here. And the other one, for example, here we have the Y menu, risk management menu. All these commands and more, as you can see, if I scroll down, there are more commands here. They're all applicable to risk management part of AZMAT system. As we'll see that, and they create dozens and dozens of your own user files. So your user file is not just AZMAT data file, as you saw. All these files, result files, will be created with the current user's ID, 2-letter ID. So they will begin with your ID, in this case will be AA, and so on, volatility or correlation results files. And here we have the N menu. This menu I've created especially for you, the system developer, in order to show you how you can add your commands to AZMAT system to begin with, and how you can, by very, very simple, really, it's like at hand-holding stage. So initially, you will learn just by changing, for example, this C or D or whatever here. Here I've left A to J, specially created these commands, so the framework is there. So what we have is the beginning of the beginning of the command, ending of the command properly and in the right place. And all you have to do is enter the actual command, which could even be just one line or one word in between. And when you click, for example, that if you had entered in D or C or wherever, these from here to there, all of these are available for you. Then when you click that command will be executed in front of your eyes in Excel within AZMAT System. And later on, as you learn more how to actually write more and more, learn the whole to create the actual command, you'll be able to create your own commands. You can add them here, underneath here, or in between, anywhere you like. And these, so just the difference between these, below this separator line and above this separator line, is these commands from there all the way up to here are in Excel macro command, macro language. And the ones below, from here on there, in Excel VBA commands. So you will learn, you will see that the same commands, for example, here I have here, change columns to ABC, or change columns to numbers in Excel VBA. Same commands are here, change columns to ABC, change columns to numbers, are done within Excel macro and Excel VBA, and you will see the difference in both. Completely different way of programming, but you will see and learn how to do those in a future version of tutorial. So I'll save this again now. So we will now close this particular session. We've just gone over 1.5 hours, which will probably be, I think, appropriate time to stop now, and we'll continue with this session of tutorials for AZMAT System. So I'm going to stop it now.